Picture this. It's late at night. You swore you'd be asleep an hour ago, but your thumb is still flicking up the screen, chasing one more post, one more video. You promised yourself you'd cut back on sugar, yet somehow the cookie jar is sitting empty again. You had big plans to start that project today, but Netflix whispered its siren song and the hours vanished. We call these bad habits, but the Stoics, over 2,000 years ago, saw them differently. To them, these patterns weren't signs of weakness. They were simply energy pointed in the wrong direction. And that's the key. Energy can be redirected. The Stoics had a plan, not just to wrestle with these habits temporarily, but to dismantle them completely, replacing them with virtues that made life fuller and freer. Today, I'm going to share 7 Stoic practices, timeless, proven strategies to help you reclaim your time, sharpen your focus, and take back your life. Bad habits feel good, at least for a while. They're seductive because they pay us instantly. A quick hit of dopamine from scrolling, that cozy wave of comfort from a plate of junk food, the warm spark of belonging from a bit of gossip. In the moment, they feel harmless, even deserved. But the Stoics understood the hidden danger. These are rented pleasures, and the bill always comes due. The cost isn't just the calories, the wasted time, or the fractured focus. It's the slow erosion of self-mastery. Seneca captured it perfectly when he wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Every time we give in, we're not simply spending a few stray minutes. We're reinforcing a pattern, training ourselves to obey the wrong master. Desire. And desire, when left unchecked, doesn't politely stop after one taste. It grows hungrier. It whispers just one more, until one more becomes the norm, until the habit isn't something you do anymore. It's who you are. The Stoics warn that if you don't master desire, it will master you, and when it does, it won't be satisfied with a nibble. It will demand the whole feast. The 7 Stoic practices. The Stoics mastered the art of slowing down in that precious space between impulse and action, the moment where your future self is decided. Marcus Aurelius treated every choice as a gatekeeper moment, pausing long enough to ask himself, is this in line with the person I want to be? If the answer was no, there was no negotiation. No, just this once. He simply didn't do it. This wasn't about overthinking every move. It was about protecting his values from being eroded by unexamined urges. The truth is, most bad habits live in the reflex. The automatic grab for your phone, the hand reaching for the snack, the quick click onto something you know will waste your time. But when you insert even a few seconds of awareness, you regain the power to choose. Next time you feel the pull of an old habit, count to 3. Breathe deeply. In that breath, you've already done something extraordinary. You've broken the autopilot. Then ask yourself the question Marcus would, does this move me closer to the life I want? That single pause can turn an unconscious reaction into a conscious decision, and the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Over time, you stop being a slave to your impulses and start becoming the architect of your own actions. That's the power of practicing the pause. It's small enough to do anywhere, yet strong enough to change everything. Epictetus understood that true strength isn't built in comfort. It's forged in the moment is when you willingly step into challenge. He would choose small, controlled discomforts like cold baths, fasting, or waking before dawn, not as acts of self-punishment, but as training grounds for the mind. Each time he denied the body's craving for ease, he proved to himself that his will was stronger than his urges. The beauty of voluntary discomfort is that it's entirely on your terms. You choose the challenge, you choose the moment, and by doing so, you build resilience for the challenges you don't choose. Start small, skip the elevator, and take the stairs. Leave your phone in another room while you work. Take a cold shower and feel the shock, knowing that in those seconds, you're teaching yourself to stay calm under stress. Over time, these little acts add up. Your threshold for discomfort rises, and the fears or cravings that once controlled you lose their grip. The Stoics knew that life would inevitably bring storms. Voluntary discomfort was their way of training for the downpour while the skies were still clear, so that when hardship came, they didn't break. They stood ready. The Stoics understood a simple truth about human behavior. Nature hates a vacuum. If you rip out a habit and leave nothing in its place, the empty space will almost always pull you back to the very thing you were trying to escape. That's why they didn't just say stop and they replaced. Gossip wasn't simply silenced. It was transformed into meaningful conversation that built trust instead of eroding it. Mindless scrolling wasn't just cut off. It was swapped for walking in nature, letting the mind breathe and the senses reconnect with the real world. The genius of this approach is that it doesn't leave you fighting temptation in a void. It gives your mind something better to focus on. And here's the key. The replacement habit must meet the same underlying need as the old one, but in a healthier way. If you gossip for connection, seek it through kindness. If you scroll for stimulation, find it in learning or creative work. By redirecting the energy rather than trying to kill it, you not only remove the pull of the bad habit, but also create a source of joy and purpose that makes going back unappealing. The Stoics knew that lasting change comes not from simply saying no, but from giving yourself a more powerful yes. The Stoics knew that chasing instant results is the fastest way to burn out, lose focus, and slip back into old patterns. Instead of obsessing over the finish line, they put their energy into the act of showing up, day after day, choice after choice. They understood that it's the repetition, not the rush, that transforms who you are. When you measure success only by outcomes, every slow day feels like failure. But when you measure by effort, every day you honor your commitment becomes a victory. Seneca captured this beautifully when he said, "Nothing is great which is not also calm." Real progress is steady, grounded, and unshaken by the noise of impatience. So instead of asking, "Did I win yet?" the Stoics asked, "Did I show up today? Did I act in line with my values?" Over time, those small daily victories compound into unshakable character. And it's character that crushes bad habits, because a person built on discipline doesn't need to wrestle with temptation every time. They've already decided who they are, and their actions simply follow. Seneca and Marcus Aurelius treated journaling as a daily ritual, not a hobby. For them, it was a mirror, a way to see themselves clearly, to confront their thoughts, actions, and patterns without the fog of excuses. Each night, Marcus would write about the day, where he lived up to his principles, where he fell short, and what he could do better tomorrow. Seneca used his writing to dissect his reactions, challenge his fears, and strengthen his reasoning. Journaling turns vague intentions into concrete awareness. When you write down not just what you did, but why you did it, patterns emerge. You start to see the triggers that pull you toward your bad habits, the moods, the times of day, the environments that make them more likely. This awareness is your first weapon, because you can't change what you don't see. And journaling isn't about perfection or eloquence. It's about honesty. Even a few raw, unfiltered sentences a day can build a map of your mind. Over time, you'll notice your choices shifting, not because you're forcing yourself to be better, but because you're becoming too aware to keep making the same unconscious mistakes. Memento mori. Remember you will die. At first it sounds grim, maybe even morbid, but for the Stoics, it was a source of power, not despair. They didn't dwell on death to create fear. They used it to create urgency. Life is short, and every moment wasted is a moment you never get back. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he was mortal, not to depress himself, but to sharpen his focus on what truly mattered. When you hold mortality in your mind, the temptation to sink hours into the same bad habits loses its grip. That endless scroll, that needless argument, that binge of empty comfort, do they really deserve pieces of a life you can't refill? Memento mori cuts through distraction instantly because it forces you to ask the essential question. If today were my last, would I choose this? Most of the time, the answer will be no, and that no can be the push you need to act differently. This isn't about living in fear of the end. It's about living fully in the time you have. When you remember you will die, you start to live like your minutes matter. And that's when bad habits begin to die long before you do. Epictetus warned that you inevitably become like the company you keep, not because you consciously decide to copy them, but because human nature absorbs the attitudes, behaviors, and standards of the people around you. If everyone in your circle indulges in the very habits you're trying to break, the gravitational pull back into those patterns will be almost impossible to resist. It's not about judging others. It's about protecting the environment that shapes you. The Stoics were deliberate about surrounding themselves with those who valued wisdom, discipline, and virtue, because they knew that virtue is contagious in the same way vice is. Seek out people, communities, and even the content you consume that lift you toward your higher self. Join groups where discipline is normal, where meaningful conversations replace gossip, where self-improvement is a shared goal, not a lonely struggle. Even in the digital age, your company can be the books you read, the videos you watch, and the voices you allow into your mind. If you can't find a circle that embodies the values you want, start building one, even if it's just one or two people at first. Over time, the habits, language, and mindset of your environment will become your own. And when you surround yourself with virtue, staying on the path of self-mastery stops feeling like a battle. It starts feeling like home. Pick one practice, just one, to start with this week. Don't fall into the trap of trying to overhaul your entire life in a single burst of motivation, because mastery isn't built in a day, it's built step by step. Maybe you begin with journaling, taking 5 minutes each night to reflect on your actions and patterns. Maybe you choose voluntary discomfort, adding a small daily challenge that strengthens your resilience. Or maybe you start with practicing the pause, creating space between impulse and action so you can choose deliberately instead of reacting blindly. Whatever you choose, commit to it fully. Make it non-negotiable for the week. Once it starts to feel natural, once it stops being something you have to remember and starts being something you simply do, layer in another practice, then another. Slowly, these principles will weave themselves into your daily life until they're not just things you do, but part of who you are. And that's when breaking bad habits stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like your new normal. The Stoics believed the greatest victory you could ever achieve was conquering yourself. Bad habits are not dragons you slay once and then walk away from. They're more like weeds in a garden. They will grow back if you don't tend to them daily. That's why these 7 practices aren't quick fixes or trendy hacks. They're lifelong tools meant to be sharpened and used over and over again. They help you not just remove what's harmful, but replace it with what's strong, lasting, and aligned with your values. So, which one will you start with today? Will you practice the pause, embrace voluntary discomfort, keep a journal, or maybe surround yourself with people who lift you higher? Drop it in the comments and take that first step. And remember, as Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Because the moment you master your mind, the battle with bad habits is already halfway won.